Change leaders maintain strategic direction amid opposition. Leadership learning. On 10th October 1980, UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher delivered her defiant, not for turning speech to the Conservative Party conference in Brighton. This address came at a critical juncture in British political history when Thatcher faced mounting pressure to reverse her economic policies. The speech contained the now iconic phrase, "You turn if you want to, the lady's not for turning," which became one of the most memorable declarations in modern British politics and established a defining moment in her political career. By October 1980, Thatcher's government confronted severe economic challenges. Inflation remained stubbornly high despite monetarist policies aimed at controlling the money supply. Unemployment had risen sharply as traditional manufacturing industries struggled under tight fiscal policies and high interest rates. Within her own Conservative Party, critics dubbed Wets openly questioned whether the government should continue with such stringent economic measures. Even some cabinet members doubted the sustainability of her approach, suggesting reversal might be necessary to prevent further decline. The Brighton conference represented a crucial test of Thatcher's political authority. Senior party figures had begun advocating for what they termed a pragmatic U-turn to address the recession's human costs. Traditional Tory values emphasizing social cohesion and concern for unemployment seemed at odds with the government's monetarist orthodoxy. Many expected Thatcher might moderate her stance, acknowledging the political and economic realities confronting her administration. The pressure extended beyond internal party politics, as opposition parties, trade unions, and media commentators questioned whether her experiment with free market economics had failed before properly beginning, intensifying the economic turbulence already unsettling the nation. Thatcher's speech addressed these concerns directly whilst rejecting any suggestion of compromise. She defended her government's commitment to controlling inflation as the foundation for sustainable economic recovery. The phrase "not for turning" cleverly referenced Christopher Fry's 1948 play The Lady's Not for Burning, transforming a cultural illusion into political defiance. Her rhetoric emphasized conviction over consensus, positioning steadfastness as leadership strength rather than inflexibility. She argued that reversing course would represent political cowardice and economic folly, suggesting that short-term pain was necessary for long-term national renewal. The speech resonated far beyond the conference hall. It crystallized what became known as Thatcherism, an ideology combining free market economics, reduced state intervention, individual responsibility, and resolute leadership. Her willingness to maintain unpopular policies despite significant opposition established a template for conviction politics that influenced subsequent British prime ministers and international leaders. However, her policies and leadership style were deeply polarizing. While they eventually curbed inflation and reshaped Britain's economy, they also brought severe short-term hardship, with unemployment surging and traditional industries collapsing before recovery began. The address also reinforced her Iron Lady reputation, originally coined by Soviet journalists, but embraced by Thatcher as emblematic of her leadership style. The historical significance of this moment extends beyond one speech or one leader. It represented a fundamental shift in British political economy, moving away from post-war Keynesian consensus towards market liberalization. Thatcher's refusal to compromise signaled that her government intended genuine transformation rather than incremental adjustment. The privatization programs, trade union reforms, and financial deregulation that followed all trace their political legitimacy back to this declaration of intent. Whether viewed as courageous leadership or ideological stubbornness, the Brighton speech marked a turning point that reshaped Britain's economic landscape and political culture for decades to come, demonstrating how a leader's willingness to withstand pressure and maintain strategic direction during crisis can fundamentally alter a nation's trajectory. Thatcher's defiance in Brighton reflected a leader intervening to protect strategic direction when internal uncertainty threatened to derail transformation. Change leadership lessons. The Brighton speech demonstrates how vision, conviction, clarity, goals, and intervention enable change leaders to execute strategic direction when external and internal pressures intensify. Leaders of change must maintain focus on fundamental objectives, even when immediate circumstances generate substantial pressure to reverse course or abandon transformations. They transform perceived weaknesses into demonstrated strengths through skillful communication, helping stakeholders interpret steadfastness as principled leadership rather than inflexible stubbornness. Change leaders require strategies for managing dissent among senior colleagues whilst preserving overall team cohesion, ensuring internal disagreements do not undermine external credibility or effectiveness. They must recognize that publicly committing to controversial directions means subsequent actions either validate or undermine declarations, with reversal often proving more damaging than opposition. Leaders of change separate tactical modifications that strengthen implementation from fundamental changes, signaling retreat, maintaining strategic direction, plan, and action, whilst adapting operational approaches as circumstances evolve. Summary leadership quote: Change leaders distinguish between strategic conviction worth defending and tactical flexibility worth applying, knowing when to persist for transformation and when to adapt to sustain success. Application: change leadership responsibility. 3. Intervene to ensure sustainable change. Margaret Thatcher's 1980 Brighton speech exemplifies a critical leadership responsibility, intervening to ensure change prevails when conviction falters. Her intervention was not about announcing new initiatives, but reinforcing the direction already set. Faced with dissent in her cabinet and wider party, she understood that transformation only sustains when leaders preserve clarity of purpose and confidence in execution. By intervening publicly and decisively, she maintained coherence, reinforced accountability, and prevented tactical retreat from becoming strategic reversal. Change leaders must recognize that executing the plan does not ensure successful change implementation. Once opposition intensifies or fatigue sets in, active reinforcement is required to align vision with daily implementation actions and measures. Without visible intervention, nostalgia for the old way or competing priorities can erode progress. Human behavior lies at the heart of this challenge. Leaders must recognize that attitudes, habits, and emotions often resist change more strongly than new processes or systems. Effective change leadership intervention focuses on behavioral change, ensuring adoption, detecting wavering commitment, and re-engaging those struggling to internalize or accept the change. Leadership of change. Final thoughts. Leaders of change must continually intervene to sustain transformation, converting conviction into business continuity. In today's era of artificial intelligence and digital disruption, it is decisive leadership, not technology alone, that secures the alignment of people, processes, systems, and purpose. Sustainable change endures when leaders embed the new way of working into normal day-to-day operations. Find out more. Change Management Leadership, Leadership of Change, Volume 4,